With almost 30 years of experience in clinical psychology, I'm here today to tell you 3 things that happen when parents compare kids to other kids. First of all, I don't think I'm here today to tell you to stop doing it, because I'm not sure that you can. I think that our psychology is designed in such a way that we're constantly comparing. Have you noticed this? You compare yourself all the time, sometimes kind of unfairly, don't you? And your kids, you're going to compare them to something, whether it's an imagined standard, whether it's to their siblings and the other kids in the family, or whether it's to what you think most kids are like, you're going to do those comparisons. So I want you to notice that you're doing it. Now, what happens when we compare our kids to other kids? The first thing that I want to call to your attention is the way that it changes you, and specifically your mood, because there are processes going on in our mind all the time, and you can't turn them off. It's kind of like gravity. It's a natural principle, a natural law that is constantly in play, that we are judging or evaluating ourselves, our kids, our circumstances, everything in our life. Notice that you're doing it. And how we evaluate our kids changes how we feel. As a family coach and psychologist, I get this a lot when people come to me and they say, "Oh, my kids are struggling with this and they're struggling with that." And it's true. They are having some challenges with that. The way they feel, the way the parents feel about this is based on how they're judging their kids. And sometimes I call their attention to it. I'll do the same thing for you, because I worked on a juvenile murder unit. Now think about that. All of the kids on the unit were under 18 years old and had killed at least one other person. Don't think about that too much. It's kind of disturbing. But then just ask yourself, now how's my kid doing? What did you notice? We're comparing your kid to other kids, and kids who are incarcerated for extreme felonies. Well, when you compare your kid to those kids, your kid's doing pretty well, unless your kid's one of those, right? And then you're comparing your kid to kids who are outside of jail, and you feel worse about how your kid's doing as a result. There's always a comparison. Just notice that you're doing it, and notice how it changes how you feel. That's the number one thing I wanted to share with you about what happens when you compare your kids to others. Your own feelings change. Now, moving past the way that this judgment, this comparison changes our own mood and feelings, the next thing that happens when we compare our kids to other kids is that we model the way judgment and evaluation happens for our kids. And it's really common for kids to pick up on whatever their parents are doing. Whether you like it or not, they're going to pick up on it. And you're training and educating and programming them about how to judge themselves or others. And what that often comes down to is, what standards of comparison are really important to us? So if we're constantly comparing our kids with children who do much better academically, for example, they're going to start to understand that academic achievement is the important standard of comparison, at least to their parents. And if that's not an area where they excel, that can start to cause feelings of inadequacy or not measuring up. In fact, that's one of the biggest pitfalls of comparing our kids to other kids. And there's another really interesting psychological principle here that is probably worth mentioning, and that is, it doesn't matter if it's negative or positive. And I mean the comparisons, because sometimes you'll say, "Oh, you know what? You're much better than other kids at this or that." Well, that creates a little bit of a sense of pressure for your kids. Either way, it can foster feelings of inadequacy and almost a desperation to keep up the standard that has been set by the comparison in the first place. So maybe that's enough about what happens when we compare our kids to others. How about we talk a little bit next about what we can do about it? Are you down for that? Here's my first suggestion. Avoid this phrase. Why can't you be more like so-and-so? Your brother, your sister, the kid down the street. Why can't you be more like? First of all, a why question like that, there's no good answer. How do you answer that? And what answer would satisfy you? Instead of putting it in that context, let's do what we can to focus on individual strengths and interests and achievements of any of our kids, without the comparison with the big brother or big sister, without the comparison of what most kids do. Focus in on that individual and start to build them up as individuals, unique and separate and distinct from other people around them. Yes, there will always be comparisons. The more we can focus on their individual strengths and preferences and talents, I think the more confident they're going to start feeling in themselves. What we're trying to do here is move the motivation from an external motivation of trying to measure up to a more internal motivation that has them feeling good about who they are and what they can do. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. That will always be true. And unless you're the very best in the whole world at something, there's always going to be somebody better. Unless you're the very worst at something in the whole world, there's always going to be somebody who's worse at it than you are. So wherever we are is right where we should be. Let's communicate that to our children as well and help them to gain that sense of self-confidence that will carry them forward without the inadequacy of all of those unfair comparisons. Parenting can be a challenging thing, but you're not alone in this. Did you know that we have resources available to you right now at Live on Purpose Central? You can be the parent you've always promised yourself that you would be. Let's put the support and the resources behind you to do that. There's a link in the description. Live on Purpose Central. Come on over. We've got your back.
Head was down, face locked onto the phone.